Beneath a storm-darkened Montana sky, an enormous elephant shields a trembling calf from a pack of snarling wolves, his thunderous trumpet shaking the air. Desperation, fear, and an impossible bond hang heavy between them. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The Montana plains stretched endlessly beneath a steel-gray sky, dew still clinging to the grass as dawn broke with hesitant light. Hank moved with deliberate steps, his massive feet sinking softly into the damp earth, each footfall a quiet reminder of his solitude in this vast wilderness. His thick, wrinkled skin bore the marks of a life far removed from the wild, faint scars from chains long shed, eyes dulled by memory but still sharp with awareness. Years ago, the roar of the circus had filled his ears, a cacophony of forced performances and frightened animals. Now, in this open land, every breath Hank took was freedom itself, a freedom he fiercely guarded, not just for himself, but for any creature caught in the unforgiving grasp of loneliness and danger. That morning, as the first light painted the horizon, a sound shattered the stillness. A high-pitched, trembling cry carried faintly on the wind. Hank's ears twitched, and his gaze sharpened. His heart, seasoned with years of survival and loss, recognized the plea instantly. Without hesitation, he veered toward the source, his strides purposeful yet cautious. The plains could be merciless, and every second counted. In a small hollow sheltered by a thicket of wild sagebrush, Hank found him, a calf no older than a few weeks, his coat matted and damp from the night's rain, eyes wide and filled with raw terror. Joey, the calf, had been torn from his mother's side in a sudden, violent thunderstorm that had swept the plains under a furious sky. The howling wind and pounding rain had scattered the herd, and in the chaos, Joey's tiny legs had faltered, leaving him stranded and vulnerable in a world too large and harsh for one so small. Joey's breath came in shallow, ragged gasps, his tiny frame shivering uncontrollably. His eyes darted around, searching desperately for the familiar warmth of his mother's presence. But there was only emptiness and silence. To him, the sprawling plains were a labyrinth of dangers, predators lurking in shadows, cold creeping into his bones, and the overwhelming weight of abandonment pressing down like a storm cloud. Hank approached slowly, his enormous form casting a comforting shadow. There was no fear in his gentle eyes, only a quiet empathy born of his own history. He understood what it meant to be lost, to be small and defenseless in a world that seemed indifferent to suffering. Years ago, in the cramped confines of a circus cage, Hank had known the sharp sting of loneliness and the desperate hope for escape. Now, with Joey trembling beneath him, those memories fueled a fierce resolve. The old elephant knelt down carefully, his trunk reaching out with deliberate tenderness. He nudged the calf gently, coaxing him toward safety. Joey hesitated, fear etched into every muscle, but the softness in Hank's touch broke through the terror. Slowly, Joey climbed onto Hank's broad back, the tiny calf finding an unlikely refuge atop the giant's sturdy frame. The weight of Joey's small body was light, yet it anchored something heavy inside Hank, a profound sense of purpose rekindled. But safety was fragile. As Hank began to move, a sudden ripple of movement caught his eye. A pack of wolves, eyes glinting with hunger, emerged cautiously from the tree line. The wild's cruelty was never far behind. Tension snapped taut in the cool morning air. Hank's trunk lifted in a powerful trumpet, a fierce cry that rolled across the plains like thunder, reverberating with the authority of an ancient guardian. The wolves hesitated, growling low, muscles coiled to strike, but the commanding presence of the elephant sent them retreating into the shadows. Hank's breath came heavy, his heart pounding not from fear, but from the burden of the task ahead. He knew Joey's survival depended on more than just strength. It required vigilance, patience, and an unwavering commitment. The journey to reunite this lost calf with his mother would be perilous, every step layered with uncertainty and danger. Yet, As Hank's eyes met Joey's trembling gaze, the promise of protection was clear. In that moment, under the looming sky of Montana's wild plains, an unspoken bond formed, a testament to resilience, compassion, and the quiet courage that blooms when two lost souls find each other amidst the chaos of the wild. The plains stretched out beneath a relentless sun, an ocean of grass waving golden and dry as the days wore on, each indistinguishable from the last. For Hank, every step was heavy with a mounting weight, not just of his own vast frame, but of the fragile life balanced precariously on his back. Joey, once a lively, trembling bundle of hope, had grown visibly weaker, his tiny legs too fragile, his spirit waning under the endless sky. Hank's strides slowed, his powerful muscles bending to protect the calf's frailty, each cautious footfall a promise carved into the earth. He would not leave Joey behind. The prairie was vast, unforgiving in its quiet expanse. Signs of Joey's mother, a broken twig, a faint hoofprint, the distant call of a herd remained elusive specters on the wind, teasing hope, but never fulfilling it. Days bled into nights under a sky smeared with stars, cold seeping deep as the sun disappeared, and the loneliness stretched wider than the horizon itself. The calf's cries, once sharp and urgent, dwindled to soft whimpers that barely stirred the air. The bright spark in Joey's wide eyes dimmed, replaced by a hollow sadness that gnawed at Hank's heart. This was no longer just a search. It was a desperate struggle against time and the wild's merciless indifference. At one point, the inevitable happened. Joey's breath grew shallow, the delicate rhythm faltering as illness took hold. Hank lowered his massive body into the grass, wrapping his trunk protectively around the calf, like a living shield against the creeping cold and the unseen dangers lurking in the dark. Nights were the hardest. The wind howled like a distant predator, and shadows danced just beyond the firefly's reach. But Hank stood sentinel, unwavering, his ancient bones aching yet resolute. The wild had taught him many lessons: strength, survival, patience, but most of all, the cruelty of loss. To lose Joey now would be to lose a piece of his own soul. Amid this grinding ordeal, the arrival of a new presence shifted the fragile balance. Sarah was a ranger, quiet, observant, and attuned to the subtle whispers of the wilderness. For weeks, she had been tracking reports of missing wildlife, her search fueled by a professional duty that masked a deeper compassion. From a distance she saw them, the improbable pair moving together, an elephant carrying a calf too small to walk alone. Something in their connection unsettled her, a profound, wordless bond that defied the rules she had sworn to uphold. Sarah's approach was cautious. She understood the risks. Wildlife authorities often acted swiftly, sometimes cruelly, separating animals that didn't fit the natural order for fear of disrupting the fragile ecosystem. Hank was a wild anomaly, an escaped circus elephant far from his native habitat. Joey, a vulnerable calf, might be deemed at risk by staying with Hank. Yet Sarah's heart defied protocol. Watching Hank shield Joey through the long nights, the way the calf's eyes flickered with faint trust despite his suffering, she saw something transcending species, a silent covenant of care and protection. Choosing compassion over rigid rules, Sarah stepped forward with measured kindness. She offered food, fresh water, sustenance that Joey desperately needed, laying it gently near Hank's feet. Her presence brought a new thread of hope, yet also a deepening tension. By aiding them, she risked interfering in the natural order. By doing nothing, she condemned Joey to a slow, uncertain fate. With quiet determination, she radioed nearby rangers, hoping to locate Joey's mother and reunite the fractured family. In those long, uncertain days, the boundary between savior and intruder blurred. Hank's protective gaze met Sarah's, an unspoken plea for trust, a shared recognition of fragility and will to survive. The wilderness around them remained indifferent, a vast, indifferent judge to their fate. Yet, in the midst of sadness and struggle, this fragile alliance whispered a possibility, that mercy might carve a path through even the hardest wilderness. The journey to reunion was no longer just about survival. It had become a reckoning of hearts, a test of what it truly meant to protect, to hope, and to endure. And beneath the endless Montana sky, that truth held its breath, waiting for the next moment to unfold. The plains held their breath as the first trumpet pierced the heavy silence, sharp and clear, a sound that cut through the endless swells of grass like a beacon of hope. It was Maggie, the matriarch of a distant herd, a mother driven by desperation and a bond that time and distance could not sever. Her voice echoed across the sweeping Montana landscape, carrying with it years of anguish and the relentless yearning to find her lost calf. The air itself seemed charged, trembling with the promise of reunion, the earth holding steady beneath the weight of a story centuries old, yet profoundly new in this quiet moment. Joey's small frame stiffened atop Hank's broad back, ears flickering as he caught the sound. The dull fog of fear and exhaustion that had clouded his wide eyes lifted suddenly, replaced by a vibrant, trembling spark, pure joy and recognition. His trembling legs kicked softly, a fluttering urgency that defied his fragile condition. Maggie's trumpet rang out again, closer now, and the ground seemed to pulse with her approach. The vast plains, once cold and indifferent, softened as life converged, weaving threads of reunion from the raw fabric of loss and survival. Maggie emerged, her colossal form striking against the horizon, every muscle taut with relief and fierce protectiveness. She slowed, eyes scanning the figure atop Hank's back, searching for the precious life that had been ripped from her side. When their gazes met, the world contracted into that instant, an electric surge of recognition and raw, unspoken emotion. Maggie's massive trunk extended slowly, trembling as it brushed tenderly against Joey's soaked coat, nuzzling him with a fierce gentleness that belied her size. Joey's eyes closed, tears shimmering on his lashes, a flood of emotions breaking free from months of fear and abandonment. The reunion was not just a meeting, it was a sacred act of healing, a reclamation of family torn apart by chaos. Maggie's breath mingled with Joey's, warm and steady, grounding him in a world that had felt hostile and unyielding. The grass beneath them seemed to sway with their reunion, the breeze carrying away the last remnants of despair. Around them, Sarah and the rangers stood silent, their breaths caught in their throats, eyes glistening with the profound weight of the moment. Hank lingered on the edge, a shadowy guardian, watching quietly. His massive heart swelled with a complex blend of pride, sorrow, and relief. The calf he had protected, carried through the harsh wilderness and perilous nights, was finally home. There was no fanfare, no triumphant cries beyond the natural calls of the wild. Instead, an almost sacred stillness settled over the plains, a recognition that this was a rare, unspoken victory, one not measured in trophies or numbers, but in the fragile beauty of survival and reunion. Hank's quiet withdrawal was the closing note of a symphony played in courage and compassion. His sacrifice was not just of time or energy, but of the very hope that had kept Joey alive. With the reunion complete, Hank retreated into the long shadows of the wild, his purpose fulfilled, his legacy imprinted in the heartbeats of those who had witnessed. News of Hank and Joey's reunion spread swiftly beyond the plains, carried by stories and images that captured the imagination of people around the world. The tale became a testament to the extraordinary capacity for empathy and sacrifice that transcends species, a reminder that strength is not measured by size alone, but by the depth of one's courage and selflessness. The image of Hank, an unlikely savior, and Joey, the fragile calf cradled atop his back, became a symbol of hope, inspiring countless to reimagine the relationships between humans and animals, between protector and vulnerable. Tears were shed, not from sorrow, but from the profound understanding that even in the wildest places, amidst the harshest trials, love endures. The reunion whispered a universal truth. that resilience is born from connection, and that the quiet heroes, those who offer protection without expectation, shape the world's most powerful stories. In the echo of Maggie's trumpet and the fading footsteps of a lone elephant, the plains carried a promise of home, healing, and the unyielding power of compassion.